Hello, and welcome back to the Right Brain Podcast. My dad is here in Tennessee again.
Once again.
And my beautiful mom is too. I took them to Abba last night, which is an amazing restaurant here. And we basically ordered everything on the menu.
It was incredible. And what does Abba mean?
Oh, yeah. They got in like this whole argument. Like Abba, my dad was like, Abba means father. And then I don't know. Neither of them were meeting each other halfway. I had to be the mediator and be like, guys, my mom said it was Baba. See, she's in the background. She's like, it's Baba. Then they had to ask the waitress. It was a whole thing. And this is why I have a mental health podcast, because I had to grow up with this. Just kidding. Okay. So today I think we're going to talk about color theory. I'm sitting like this because my hip hurts. And I thought that my dad would feel bad for me. But instead he said, what are you doing about it? And that's what happens when you have a doctor, chiropractor father. I need to fix this. But anyway, that's why I'm sitting like this. We're talking about color theory because I think we touched upon it like last episode or something. And then we decided like maybe we should do a whole episode on it. I used your book when I was in college to write a whole paper on it, which was not cheating, but maybe nepotism, that I had a dad that could tell me how to write a whole essay on it.
Nepo baby.
For music, I wrote like a whole, we wanted to do color theory and sound theory and light theory.
Yeah, just light. Yeah, light right now, I think, because
light. Okay.
When we're looking at, light and color, because what is color? But light waves and different frequencies of light waves. And then there's other ways to use light. Like we use it really effectively through what's called photobiomodulation. Some people refer to it as laser, but that's kind of scary to some people. But yeah, so it comes down to, we've talked a lot about, whether we've talked about using the brain driver or using electrical stimulation, or whether we've talked about, other things like vibration, or looking at different frequencies. And we talked about like neurofeedback. And when we're using neurofeedback, what we're trying to do is get brainwaves. And what brainwaves are is just what's called oscillations at different frequencies. So basically, when we talk about information in the brain, or when we talk about communication in the brain, it all comes down to frequencies that right now, for the most part, we usually look at them between what's called 0 to 60 hertz, 100 hertz, something like that. So anything that can alter brainwave frequencies can be used therapeutically, or it can also make things worse. So, depending on, so knowing about that. And I think I gave an example. I don't know if it was, I think it was in another podcast, but I was teaching my course in New York last year, and I had a doctor that was from Florida, a mom, who came up. And like a lot of doctors that take my course, a lot of it is because they have a kid or with struggles. So she had a little girl, and the little girl was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and she was having some issues with, like ADHD and other issues. And so the mom came up to learn more about it. And in the course, I did a whole thing on looking at light and colors and how it affects the brain and how it can be used therapeutically, or how it might make things worse. There's interesting research. I put this in one of my books, that even the color of the pills you take, like vitamin pills, can actually have an impact on your body and on
Really?
effects. Yeah. And so in this, I was talking about how, red or lower frequency colors like red, yellow, orange stimulate the left brain through what we call the parvocellular pathways. So I love I know you love when I use fancy
Well, I was
terms.
going to say, is it the cellular?
Right. You knew that, right? Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to let you say it. So
I was almost trying to lead into you because I knew you'd jump in. The parvocellular. And then, we look at the higher frequency colors, blue, indigo, violet. as being more right hemisphere through the magnocellular receptors and pathways. And so there's research under this. This isn't just somebody saying, oh, different color therapy, woo-woo. No, there's real research on this and showing. And green is kind of in the middle. Green is basically the color of Earth, right? It's like the frequency of Earth. And it's kind of like the most neutral. We have 7 basic colors that we can see in the visible light spectrum. And that goes from red to violet. And if you go a little bit below red, that's called infrared, right? So it means that we can't see it, but it's there. And then if we go to one step above violet, it's ultraviolet. So we know we get that from the sun, and we know that they're real sun waves, and obviously we can get burned from them. They're real waves, but we don't see them. And all of that is based on the frequency of the waves, meaning how fast they move. And that has different impact on receptors. And so anyway, I was explaining that, to this mom. She called the dad up during a break, and he was in Florida with the daughter. And she said, her daughter's favorite colors were like red and orange and yellow. And she said, get them out of her room and put blue and violet in there, or green. And then the mom told me that the next day the dad said to her, I don't know if this is coincidental, but I did that. I took all these colors out and I dressed her in these different colors. And we had like the best night we've ever had. Like her behavior was so much better. And so it really does have an impact, and there's many different ways to do it. We don't think about it. I mean, the colors of what you wear, what's in your room. And people are typically attracted to their strong colors, right? Like right brain people may tend to be attracted to blue and green and violets, whereas people that are left brain dominant may be attracted to like red or pink or orange or yellowy, and that ends up making you more unbalanced, because again, if you're going towards your strength and you have that in your environment, it can cause different things.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess I have to think about that, because I obviously, you guys know that I've always thought magenta is the color of my aura.
Right. Yes.
I talked about that recently. Someone that I was seeing said, what's your favorite color? I said magenta. It's the color of my aura.
Your mom would probably know this, but is magenta more of a purple, or is it more of a bluish? But is it pink, or is it more of a bluish violet color?
I feel like it's more of...
Aha. The painter has
Carolyn says bluish violet, and the discussion is over. That's that. So maybe that's why I like it, because it's more like a bluish whatever.
Yeah, because you always, when you were little, you would always say purple was your favorite. When you were very little, you'd say purple was your favorite color.
Yeah, that's true. But also, sorry, I feel like I'm like going all over the place. But you had... I think we mentioned this once on the podcast, but you had a woman come over and do Irlen lenses.
Right.
And that was really cool.
Yes.
Those glasses were sick. Also, every time I wore them out, people were like, those are sick glasses. I lost them at a party. I think someone was trying them on. But they were so cool. And okay. Anyway, let's explain what Irlen lenses are.
What was the color of those lenses, by the way?
They were like magenta-ish. It was like reddish.
Yes, exactly. The opposite.
Okay.
Yeah, so Dr. Irlen, Irlen.
That's not how I was going to spell that, so okay. Thought it was E8. Actually, whatever.
You were going to spell it like Urkel?
Irlen. Yeah. Never mind.
So one of the things I did with my textbook, the first book I wrote, is there were all these different therapies, many that were around for many years, especially starting in like the 1950s, 60s, for learning disabilities and other issues. And, there were people that were doing music and sound therapy. There were people that were doing, nutritional interventions. There was a lot of kind of explosion of different people that were really pioneers. But at the time, they didn't really have any of the neuroscience under it, because there really was no way to look at the brain in any specific way. So it was all just observational. And they would say, well, this seems to work, but doesn't work all the time, and we don't really know why it works. And they would come up with some theory as to why it worked. But, the theory wasn't really based on anything. So when I wrote my textbook, what we wanted to do was really create a universal theory, of a universal model that all of these neurobehavioral disorders are really related to the same issue, which is known as a functional disconnection. And then once we built that model scientifically and understood how the hemispheres work and how the brain grows and develops, we wanted to then look at all of the different modalities out there and say, how do they maybe work? Because, of course, in traditional medicine, they looked at them like it was all BS. And that because there was no real research, and because, it wasn't in the mainstream medical world. So, of course, they always kind of poo-pooed it and said it wasn't real. And I wanted to look at it from just an objective standpoint and say, if it is real, how does it work? Based on this model now, if you're going to look at something. So one of the things I wanted to look at was Irlen lenses, because Irlen lenses had been around for a while. I mean, at one point, I think there was stores or offices all over the country. And the idea was that, especially with kids that had dyslexia, that they noticed that if they use different colors, either if they put a different like clear acetate paper or they used a different color paper, that some kids who really had great difficulty reading, when they changed the color of the paper or they put clear acetate, that they would be able to read. And, they really didn't have a good explanation for it. They came up with an explanation that, it was something about white and black paper was too strong, but didn't really make sense. And the fact is that all the different people may relate to different kinds of colors. And so I wanted to look at that and say, all right, how could that be working? So one of the most common things is if they put yellow paper or red paper over it, or acetate, that would help. And then later they started making lenses. And what they would do is they would have people sit there and they would have them view something, and they would put these, when you go to an optometrist now and they say, does it look better this way or that way?
Oh my God, I hate that. Yeah, I know all about that.
It's a tough decision.
It is so hard.
For right brain people, it's hard to
I'm
make.
like, I don't know. And then they're like, well, we're about to operate on your eyes, so pick one.
And you feel like you're going to get in trouble if you pick the wrong 100%.
I'm like, oh, they're going to yell at me. Perfect.
You're going to be in trouble. So they would do this where they could put colored lenses over, but you didn't see the color. You know what I mean? Like you couldn't tell what color they were using. And they would ask you basically what looked better. And many of the people that not only were they dyslexic, but some of the people would claim that the words would move on the page, or sometimes people would say that it looks like there's almost like white, like all the spaces in between the words would come together and it looked like rivers or water flowing down.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
Yeah. Or they might be seeing double lines. And so there was a lot of different things going on, and it could be. But nonetheless, they would make these lenses that were different colors, and it seemed to help people. There's some research now that they're doing some research out there, and again, but I believe that the reason why that works is because you're affecting these different receptors, and if you pick the right ones, it's going to work on the area of your brain that's underdeveloped, that is affecting your ability to read. And so for people that are truly dyslexic, that have a left brain deficit, yellow, orange, reds usually work. So when you did the Irlen evaluation, you had like a pinkish kind of red color.
I did. Yeah. It was like pinkish, like kind of mixed with like green or something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That was also a tough decision because they were like this color or this color. And I was like, I don't know. But
and if you pick the wrong color, it'll balance your brain the wrong way.
Yeah. And then I might die. So that's why it was high stakes. But no, I remember, well, because when I read, I skip lines. Like, so I can't, I don't know what that is, but I'll read and then I'll like skip down 2 lines and then I have to go back up and I can't like follow whatever. Yep. So, but it helped a lot when I had the Irlen lenses.
Part of that is we did the vestibular, the vertigo module here, right? And that one.
Oh yeah, people be loving that episode, especially them dizzy blondes.
So that could be an oculomotor issue where your eyes are, when we talk about eye movements, there's fast movements which are called saccades. slow movements that are called pursuits. And when people overshoot, so if you have an imbalance, your eyes may overshoot a target and then they have to come back. And so if they overshoot, you're reading, if you're going slowly and then you shoot down, you may overshoot and go to the next 2 lines down instead of 1 line down. And that is, again, an imbalance that has to do in the eyes and in the cerebellum. And, so that's part of it. But
you literally have an answer for every single thing I say.
Hey,
it's crazy.
I should, right?
Yeah,
After all these years of doing it, if you know stuff. Otherwise, why be an expert? Why be here? You can have anybody here.
True. Mic drop.
So with the Irlen lenses, it was something that in the book I wrote about how I believe that, using different color acetates or lenses, you're modifying the frequency of light waves and you're affecting different receptors in the eyes, and that's affecting one hemisphere more than the other, and it can either make things worse or better and imbalances. So from that, a friend of mine named Peter Gillet out of Dallas, great guy, Dr. Peter Gillet, he then took those ideas because also there was another theory that was done in the dyslexia world about patching the eye. So they would patch an eye because of what you're talking about. Like the eyes didn't necessarily work together, or they found that in this therapy, they found that if you patched the left eye only, that some people would be able to read better and that it would affect them. And so what you're doing when you're patching the left eye, they're speculating that most people, the right eye is dominant, which it is, but that by patching the weaker eye, they were, allowing that to get better. But what they're also doing is when you're patching the left eye, you're shutting down the right brain. And by patching only the right eye, you're bringing up the left brain because the eye opposite of the brain has more input. So the left eye has more input to the right brain and the right eye has more input to the left. But the way it really works best is that the left half of both eyes goes to the right brain and the right half of both eyes goes to the left brain.
This is why when I wear my blinking glasses, they're red to stimulate my left brain that I don't have much of. And then the inside of, this is my left eye. The inside of this eye, outside of this eye.
Are you doing
so I guess,
left for left or loser?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a mixture of both. Wait, so the left side of each eye?
The left side of both eyes goes to the right brain. So
that's why I'm doing the right side of both eyes goes to the left brain. That's what
exactly.
That's okay. I wanted to make sure I was working on myself the right way. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, so they did the patching and they would patch one eye versus the other, and that seemed to help. And again, but they would only do the right eye, and that's because they would only do the left eye. That's because you're blocking the right brain, which would make the left brain come up, which is going to help dyslexia.
Yeah.
But then when we in functional neurology started to get involved in this, we started realizing, well, there's what we call the hemifield. So because with each eye, part of it goes to the right brain, part of your visual field goes to the left brain. So both eyes go to both brains. But as we said, the left half goes to the right half. So if you blocked the half, so there was a guy, this is an interesting story actually, and his name is Dr. Fred Schiffer. And Dr. Fred Schiffer, just when I was really starting to investigate a lot of this stuff in like the late 90s when I was writing my textbook, I came across a lot of his work, and he had done work he would block, 3/4 of the visual field and only allow one part of the visual field that would go to the opposite brain. So he was a psychiatrist out of Harvard, and he was in a lab in McLean Hospital, which is the #1 mental institution in the United States. It's also the oldest. And so I read this work that he was doing, and he was also doing some other stuff, like with vestibular. He was doing he was squirting like cold water in the ear, which is basically, and he was changing depression, and he was changing anxiety and depression. And so he ended up making these glasses that he taped 3/4 of the visual field and only allowed people to see out of the outer half of one eye. And he said by putting on different glasses like that, he could change anxiety and depression. And some people, it would be the left side would be better blocked. Some people would be the right side. So, and he knew a decent amount about the whole right-left brain stuff. He had been kind of connected to some of the early research. And so I thought it was really fascinating because, again, it was in that same evolution, right? The Irlen lenses and then patching of the eye. And then he was actually blocking it and talking about mental health. He wasn't just talking about dyslexia or reading or learning disabilities. So I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then he came out with a book called Of Two Minds. And then there was like a 2020 special on him. And it was really, really cool. I mean, he was really one of the first kind of mainstream psychiatrists out there talking about the whole hemispheric model. So, you know, I used a lot of his work and I referenced it in my book. So then several years later, maybe 10, 15 years later, I get invited to lecture at MIT.
Yeah, that's right. What a flex.
To, believe it or not, the artificial intelligence department, because the guy who had been head of the artificial intelligence department was seeing a friend of mine in his practice, and he was reading my textbook when he was in the office. So he felt like, okay, this guy, you know, we don't really know why we can't make artificial intelligence really work like a human brain. So anyway, he invited me to come. A guy reached out. I won't do the whole story, but there was a psychologist reached out who was also from Harvard. And he had read my book, Disconnected Kid. He had a kid with ADHD. And he was a researcher also at Harvard and in McLean Hospital, researching ADHD and bipolar. But he wanted to come and, you know, see what I was doing. And so we invited him to come see the lecture. Comes to see the lecture. After the lecture, he comes up and introduces himself to me. His name was Leslie Weiser, great guy. And then he says, and by the way, I brought a friend of mine who's also in our lab, and his name is Dr. Fred Schiffer. So it was full circle. So they invited me to their lab, and I went and did a lecture there. And then they ended up doing a whole independent study on me. So it really all started with the idea that he was blocking, you know, he said it was pretty cool. What he would do is, and people out there, if you want to try this, you can try it. Literally, you block one eye with your hand, and then you block the inside of your other eye so that you only allow the outside half. And if you look straight ahead and you do it, if you're feeling any anxiety or depression, try it.
I've never felt anxiety and depression. There's no need for me to do
I know you're feeling it right now.
I am feeling it right now.
Right,
actually.
of course. So cover one eye and then only the half of the eye and look straight ahead, right? And just see if you feel better or worse, and then try the other side and see if you feel better or worse.
I think I feel better when I block like this.
Okay, but you're not blocking that whole eye. You're not blocking half of that eye. Okay, there you go.
I think I feel better like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? No, maybe not. I don't know. I need to work on it.
The point is that he could find that just by doing that, in 80% of his patients, they would feel either better or worse, depending on which side they would do. Which means that what are they doing? They're creating some sort of balance in their brain by just modifying the way light is coming into their eyes, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So then eventually, like I said, in functional neurology, we came up with these hemifield lenses where they would be split. The outside of one side would be all blue and the other side would be red, right? So those were just hemifield glasses. I don't know. Okay. I think I had you wear some of those.
I've been the guinea pig for a lot of these.
And then things. Dr. Peter Gillette came up with these lenses that were either all different colors, blue, red, green, violet, but we primarily use red when we want to stimulate the left brain, and we use blue when we want to stimulate the right brain. And then there are lights that flash either in the left half of both eyes or the right half of both eyes.
Yeah. And also, I know we kind of like told this story a little bit, but just because now we're giving like more backstory. So basically what you're saying is the way that light comes into your eyes makes a huge difference, obviously, on your mood and your brain and everything. But then when that light has color to it, that is how you control like, or how you're being affected and whatever. So when you told a story recently, and I said I saw it when I went to one of your lectures where that guy, like, I know you're gonna not be able to not imitate him again, but you said he was like moving around and he couldn't really walk straight, and then when they put a certain color in front of his eyes, and he could walk straight again, right?
Yes. So
okay, so can you tell that story?
In the movement therapy world, people that have tics or
he's starting to move already,
athetoid type movement. It's been known for a long time that if you use blue, it changes it. But nobody in that world has ever really said why. Most movement disorders, most of them are right brain deficits. So tics,
what's an example of a movement disorder?
Tic, any sort of tic.
Okay.
Or in autism, you would refer to it as stimming. Any repetitive movement.
Or when I'm like this.
We were just watching this guy on Jeopardy the other day, and he was...
I'm shaking my leg all the time. It drives people nuts.
No, hyperactivity, where you have to move all the time, is also often usually related to right brain. But right brain dominant people also like to move. So, people, if they have like throat clearing, tics, or...
I'm going to have to start clearing my throat now. I'm thinking about all these things I'm going to start doing.
Or, they have facial tics, or if they have to do, all different types of tics or stimming, or what we call, certain types of, there are people that have different kind of movement like that, athetoid movement. And so the reason why it works is because it's blue stimulates the right hemisphere, which then goes into the basal ganglia and activates what's called the indirect hyperdirect pathway, and it shuts down the direct pathway, which being overactive is what produces those tics. Obviously. And so there's videos of it. You should show those videos sometimes of where, the blue, I showed you that. Mm-hmm. So, again, it's out there and it works. It just hasn't been explained. But I think in our textbook and the work that I've done in my book, Disconnected Kids, I had a whole chapter on color and light therapy. And it's not just color, it's light. But so there's different ways you can use it. You can use different frequencies, which would be color. So you could use, red, yellow, orange. And the frequency is going to alter the frequency of the firing in your brain. There's another way is that you can flash the light, right? So you could flash a light at a certain frequency. And that's been shown that it causes a resonance. So that if you wanted to create a 40 hertz rhythm in the brain, if you had a flashing light that was at 40 hertz, it would do that in your brain. It would literally make your brain oscillate at that rate. So actually recently, Dr. Peter Gillette, he's a good friend of mine, and so I've always had suggestions for him. So he used to have blue lenses. All the lights that flashed were always red. So he had red lights, even with blue lenses or green lenses. It was, when he first created it, just that's the way it was. And at a certain point, I said to him, Peter, if you have blue lenses, you should have blue lights. And if you have red lenses, you have red lights. And he said, all right, nobody's asked me that, but I'll do it for you. So he did, and it's great, and it works really great. So then I said to him, he always had a constant frequency of firing, which was around, I think, 8 hertz. And I said to him, but I want, like, glasses that will fire at 10 hertz or 20 hertz or 30 hertz or 40 hertz, because I may want to modify some.
Okay, but just for people, not me, but maybe other people that wouldn't understand what you're saying. Kidding, definitely me also. Why? Sorry, I'm cracking up because you were like, for example, if you want your brain to oscillate at 40 hertz, then you just change it. Like, who's like, I really would like my brain to be oscillating at 40 hertz.
A lot of people.
And why?
Actually, a lot of people out there know that 40 hertz is this kind of magical number. Like in the frequency medicine world, they know that 40 hertz. And why is 40 hertz? 40 hertz is the binding frequency in our brain. It's called gamma. So when we're in gamma or high gamma, that's the ultimate frequency. So for instance, in the meditation world, it's been shown. There was a big study or conference that was done years ago at Harvard, and it was for meditators and neuroscience. So they mixed meditation and neuroscience. And a guy named Richard Davidson, who was also amazing, did some studies. And what they found was that they looked at people that were amateur meditators, and then they looked at people that were like Buddhist monks, like that were really good at it. And they wanted to see what was the difference. And they measured their brain waves while they were getting into meditation. And when they got into the highest state of where they felt like they were in this enlightened state, they measured their brain waves. And first of all, only the Buddhist monks could get there. And when they did get there, all of their brain was oscillating at a 40 hertz rhythm, which they had never seen in anybody else. And so clearly getting into that rhythm meant something. Like when you were in this when your whole brain is balanced and synchronized in this 40 hertz rhythm, that's when you're in this like most powerful, enlightened meditative state.
And you're saying that colors, different lights coming into your eyes can put you into that
right. So
state.
These people could do it just through their practices.
Yeah.
Most people can't. So if we can use something to help people's brains get into a 40 hertz rhythm,
yeah.
So we can use light to do that if we have 40 hertz or if we use different colors. Sound can be used that way. Vibration can be used that way. Electrical current can be used that way. So, and what's really cool, and we can talk about this in another time, is that, sound and light are really kind of the same thing. In my book, In Disconnected Kids, I use a quote which said basically, light is visible sound and sound is audible light or visible light, sound. Meaning that if you look at the color red, the frequency of it is the exact same frequency wave as the note C.
That's why people with synesthesia can see this.
Right.
Or do anything to be synesthetic.
And there are 7 primary colors and there's 7 primary notes and in what we can hear. So there's a real overlap of sound and light. But one of the coolest things that light is being used at now is really in laser therapy in the brain. And that's where I'm spending a lot of my time. And there needs to be a lot more research. But first of all, people hear laser and they hear the brain.
I feel like I thought we were going to talk about lasers in this episode, and I think we should. But because there's so much that we are covering already with all this, I feel like we're going to have to do a whole another episode about lasers.
Yeah, okay, we can because it's actually really good. But the bottom line is when you hear laser, it also goes under photobiomodulation. And so right now, it's light. It's light therapy, basically using very concentrated light waves. And it goes through the skull and it can actually change the brain. It also has effects on the body. People use red light therapy or infrared therapy in many ways.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about that, because I thought maybe like that lasers and light therapy, like you were talking about, would be one and the same when we were talking about it. But now I'm kind of confused because like you're saying that the way that light is reflected into your eyes, depending on the color, is what's affecting your brain. But then if it's not reflecting into your eyes, but you're still putting like a red laser or a blue laser or something, how is that? Why does that still affect you differently? Because
in your brain cells, there are light receptors.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So you have receptors in your eye and in your retina that are going to take the light waves and are going to, bring them into the brain. But then the brain itself actually has, on brain cells, there are receptors for light.
Wow.
So that even light that goes directly through your skull. And there's a lot. I remember I had a neurologist that I was seeing a lecture with him, and he was talking about this. And he was saying that, most people don't realize how much light actually gets through your skull. And he said, I want you to envision this. Imagine that you're a mini person and that you're in your own brain and you're in your own skull. And you have a newspaper. He's like, if you're outside in the sun, there's enough light coming through your own skull that you could read a newspaper in your own skull. So most people think that it's going to be pitch black in your skull. It's not. there's a lot of light that actually can get through. And so that's natural light and sunlight. And we even have a part in our brain called the pineal gland. If you ever heard of the pineal gland.
Yeah.
And people talk about
it's
that
the
as
third eye.
Right, as its third eye. So in other animals,
my little brother is constantly terrified that my pineal gland will get calcified, and I need to really work on that not happening.
So the pineal gland has something to do with circadian rhythms, meaning that our body knows night from day. And there's rhythms in the body that go through that, these diurnal rhythms that, when we get tired at night, we wake up and that causes the release of melatonin and cortisol and will either make us sleep or wake up and regulates blood sugar in our body, regulates our temperature regulation. And a lot of that is based on the pineal gland. And so what's stimulating the pineal gland, some of it is light coming through our eye, but some of it is just light coming directly into the skull and activating. And in other animals, other lower life forms, their pineal gland is like their rudimentary eye. That's like their eye. That's what they
really?
Yes. It from an evolutionary standpoint, the pineal gland started in lower life forms as, in the most basic animals, they just sense light or dark. They're not seeing things. They're just sensing light or dark. And they're not really using it for vision. Later on, as animals evolved, they develop, more specific, sensing, so that vision wasn't just about light detection, but it was all about movement detection as well.
That's why I have a bone to pick with some of the people that commented on the video that we talked about in the past that made me want to do this podcast episode. Was maybe it was a little rage baity because I was all dressed up in all these crazy things and I didn't explain what was going on. But rage bait it's a Gen Z term. You wouldn't get it.
Okay.
But
is it like 6'7"?
It's
I just heard there's a word called 6'7". No idea what it means, but it's the number one word in the world. Did you hear that? It just came out. It's the number one word in the world, 6'7". And even in the definition, it says it doesn't actually mean anything. There's actually it's ubiquitous.
No, it's something that kids do where they go 6'7". I don't really, you know what?
Nobody knows what it means.
No, I honestly don't know.
What does that tell us about this generation?
I'm not sure. That maybe they need to work on their pineal glands a little bit, get some laser therapy.
So what was the rage baiting? Or
rage bait? No, just when you're trying to piss people off on purpose. That's not really what I was trying to do, but I didn't explain some things and people were going off in the comments. But there's a video of me with red light lenses on, and then I have whatever I have on my head, all the wires, all the things.
Right.
And then there's two red lasers going through my head. And all you nerds in the little comments were like, light doesn't go through a skull like that. This is fake, blah, blah, blah.
No, it does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Wake up.
No, it does. And there's been many studies, even looking at cadavers and things like that, that laser and especially the photobiomodulation, and it does go through. And it actually goes through your whole body.
But yeah, that's why I think we should do a whole episode on that, because I'm even fascinated by the whole lasers thing. Mm-hmm. And I always see the way that you use them on your patients, and I think it's so interesting. You only use red lasers, or you use
no, we
lasers?
just got a blue, violet, and green one. So now, but the problem is there's some really cool tools coming out, but there isn't a lot of research, and so that's the whole thing. For, I guess, if you call rage baiters, whatever. I mean, I'm never going to talk.
Very natural the way you
I'm
just
never going to talk about things, or we never use things if there's not really good research, and if I can't explain it in neuroscience terms. And even though it looks unusual and it's not mainstream medicine, it's because mainstream medicine is so kind of backward when it comes to many of these types of modalities, or behind. It's really, they're ultra conservative, and the most innovative stuff is outside of traditional medicine at this world and at this point. So, but it doesn't mean that it's outside science. A lot of people mix that up. They think, okay, only if it's in traditional medicine is it science. No, there's science, and then there's, different modalities, and how you merge those two together is different. And so for me, I've always been a clinician, but I've also always been a researcher and brain researcher, and so trying to merge that together. Okay. So there's always really good understanding of what's happening.
Okay, so just because I feel like this episode was great even though there was a lot of big words that were used, which I love that because I get them. But if we could just simplify it here and tell people how they can apply this. What would be the starting?
We'll summarize.
Okay.
So when we're talking about brains being out of balance, when we're talking about, the hemispheres being out of balance, what we're talking about is they're working at different frequency bands, and different networks in the brain are at different frequencies. And those frequencies can vary from 1 hertz to 2 hertz, up to 60, 100, 200, 300. So, and that has to do with the way that certain networks oscillate or kind of, turn on and off, on and off. Mm-hmm. And the networks speak to each other when they can get on the same frequency bands. Some people, if their brains are immature in different areas or overactive, they may have networks that are out of balance. Some may be oscillating at really fast frequencies and others at really slow frequencies, and they can't talk together, right? 40 hertz is kind of what brings everything together, but their brains can't get into that state. So they need help. Their brain may need help getting into balance. Not everybody's a meditator at the highest level and can get their brain into that state. So we use different modalities that can create different frequencies in the brain by activating receptors in the body. We could activate skin receptors, muscle receptors, vibration. We can use electrical current that will affect that. And one of the most powerful receptors we have is vision, because we rely so much on vision in humans. And so we have receptors that are sensitive to different colors, and different colors will cause different frequencies of firing. And so if you know what you're doing, you can use those colors or light flashing at a certain frequency or blocking light in a certain way. You can change the balance of the brain. But you have to know what you're doing. And if you do it the wrong way, you'll make things worse. And if you do it the right way, and by worse, I don't mean you're not going to cause any damage, but just like, we were saying, if you block one side, you may make yourself, less depressed. But if you block the other side, you might make yourself more depressed. But the good news is you can change it. So using different colors, and the way we use them, one of the ways is through these glasses called eye lights, that are different colored lenses, and the light will flash at a different frequency in one half or the other half of the eye, so it only goes to one brain or the other. So it's activating one side of the brain, and that is causing more of an inhibition of the other side of the brain. And it's a very, very effective tool.
And at its most basic, just so if you've been listening to this and you've diagnosed yourself already, if you feel like you're a more right brain person, like myself, then you should be wearing just put on a pair of red glasses that have a red tint, orange tint, yellow tint. See how you feel. Might make you feel better, because if you're right brain, you should be wearing warm lenses. Mm-hmm. If you've diagnosed yourself and you're a left brain dominant person, then you should be wearing violets, blues,
green,
that type of vibe.
Yep.
That's cool colors.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could start from there, just see how you feel. And then if you want to get fancy, you add little flashing lights in there.
Fancy.
Get eye lights. And yeah.
Yeah, and even be aware of when you walk into a room, if you feel more anxious, look at the colors.
True.
Look at the colors in your room. If you're a right brain dominant person and you're anxious, and you walk into a room and you feel more anxious,
and you're in a blue room.
If you're in a blue room or a green room or violets, you might be feeling, worse. If you're in green and earth tones, you're probably okay, because that's more neutral.
Like our chairs.
In this room, kind of. And visible light, obviously, is the whole full spectrum. And that's also, some people also, because when you look at most light that we have in rooms, it's fluorescent. And so fluorescent light isn't necessarily full spectrum. And also fluorescent light flashes.
Yeah, I know. It makes me have full
Yeah,
anxiety
and
attacks
it could
sometimes.
flash at the frequency that might make you actually not good.
That happens to me all the time. Very
Yeah.
recently on a bachelorette trip, I thought I was going to have a full panic attack.
Yeah, and that's
just because
why,
of the lights.
you know, especially with kids, having full spectrum light and not flashing light might be better, because again, if it's flashing at the wrong frequency, it could really, you know, put you into a wrong state.
Okay, great. All right. I think we covered enough here.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's really good.
Yeah.
All right, guys, chill with the 6-7.
We've shed
Start
light
wearing-
on things.
Oh my God. Say it again.
We shed light on.
Wow. And they say
subject.
I'm the songwriter. Okay, well, this was really fun. I hope you guys learned something. And as always, if you have questions, send them to me on Instagram. And yeah, love you, Dad.
Love you, honey.